Hi, today's video is part of my ongoing series on how to clean the controls on NuTone Intercom remote stations. Today's subject is the model N482, which also could be an N482BX. The difference between a standard N482 and a 482BX is the BX stands for buzzer, and those were the versions that they made that there was a built-in mechanical buzzer on the back of the intercom station. The 482 series is part of NuTone's what they call the Direct-a-Com 3 apartment house intercom systems. It was typically used in small apartment buildings, maybe 4 or 6 units, or in townhouses, or what they used to call patio home systems. And this type of speaker was used. You would typically have one station in each apartment or in each townhouse, and then you would have a single entry, common entry door for the building with a directory with buttons and a single speaker. And then it does have the option of activating an electrical door release mechanism in the exterior door, so you could essentially buzz people into the building. The 482 series works exclusively with the NuTone IMA516 amplifier, which is this amplifier right here. I do have a separate video about this amplifier in its own playlist, so you can look at that also. The controls on a 482 series speaker are pretty basic. This is the inside station. This was white, now it's more of a creamy ivory color because it has discolored some. This particular station is from the mid-1980s, so you have a volume control adjustment here. You have the intercom listen and talk switch, and then door switch. It says door, and then you move it to the open position. So the way this would operate is someone would come to the entry door, press the appropriate button, and if you have the model with the buzzer on the back of the grill, you would hear the buzzer vibrate, goes like that, or it could be hooked up to a standard doorbell or some other noise-making device like that, and you would simply go over to the station and push the lever switch down to talk, to ask who's there, and then push it up to listen to hear the response. And then if you want to buzz them in, you would move the door switch to the open position, which would activate the electric door strike in the door frame, and the person could push the door open and walk into the building. The door release part of the station is not technically part of the intercom system. It requires its own separate wiring. The 516 amplifier does not have any door release control circuitry in it. This is strictly an audio amplifier, so the door release circuitry is completely separate. The only way it's actually considered to be part of the intercom system is they use the remote station as a convenient spot to put the switch. It's not technically part of the intercom system. So I'm going to show you what goes wrong with these from a cleaning or use point of view, and how easy they are to actually clean. So we're looking at the back of the N482 speaker. This is not a model with a buzzer. This particular station began life as an N482BX, and the buzzer would have been mounted to this standoff right here, but at some point the buzzer was removed. Maybe they have standard doorbells or something in the apartment and they don't need that. So what you have here on the back of the grill, it's pretty straightforward. You have a standard NuTone 16 ohm 3.5 inch speaker cone. This is the same style and type of speaker cone that was used in NuTone entry door stations for single family home and all other entry door applications. So it's a pretty standard speaker. They're still available today, although these speakers very rarely a problem in this type of application. You can see on the back of the switch control assembly, here we have the back of the volume control with the all-important little punch out in the volume control housing to clean with. You have the 6 wire terminals for the intercom wiring. The 516 system, and therefore the N482 system, is a 6-wire system, and it absolutely is what's referred to as a wire-dependent design. It must be wired with NuTone 6-conductor IW6 intercom cable, otherwise it will not work. The cable is an integral part of the design of the system, and it cannot be substituted with other types of wire. Down here, sort of buried underneath all of these different colored wires, is the mechanical door release switch, and it has 2 leads that come off of it. These would be wired with power. This wires up like a conventional, essentially what would be a doorbell system. It's power to one side of the door strike, and the other leg of the power goes to this one through the switch and then back out this one. And when you move the switch, it completes the circuit and sends power to the door release. And then here we have the intercom control switch. This is a wafer style switch that's spring loaded, so as you move the lever, the springs return it back to the center position. When this is installed in an apartment or in a wall, all of this is open and exposed to the inside of the wall, so they get dirty and dusty and oxidized and have all the regular problems that all stations do. Fortunately, these are actually pretty easy to clean, and it's not necessary if you're doing these in apartments. You don't really have to disconnect it all to do it, as long as there's enough length of wire to turn it over. Once you detach it from the wall, you can simply clean it in place. So let me show you how I would go about doing that. So like all cleaning of controls on NuTone remote intercom stations, we're going to use our Deoxit D5, which is the preferred cleaner that we use. It does a very good job of removing dirt, dust, oxidation, and it helps improve the conductivity of the metal contacts. So we'll begin with the volume control here. Volume controls, especially on small, would be considered entry intercom systems, are important because if the connection through the volume control is lost, you don't get any audio back and forth on the system. The resident will think that the system is not working because the volume control isn't connecting the system to the outside station. So all you have to do is use your Deoxit, and you spray a little bit of cleaner into the opening in the pot. And when I say a little bit, that's really what I mean. Just a little bit will do wonders. You don't need to have it flooding down the speaker and making a big mess. And then you simply rotate it back and forth. What I like to do is turn the knob fully clockwise, spray a little bit in, turn it back and forth several times, ending up at fully counterclockwise, perhaps spraying it a little bit one more time, turning it again, and that's usually all that they really need. Now, if you're doing this in an apartment application, it's helpful if you have a helper or someone down at the entrance, so you can check each station as you go. The person at the entrance can buzz the apartment that you're in doing the cleaning. You can communicate back and forth, you can release the door, and you check all the functions as you go. It's a much easier process to do if you have two people. The next thing to clean is the slide switch for the door release, which is down here. It's probably a little bit hard to see in the video because there's a lot of things in the way. We'll see if we can move some of the wires out of the way. And what you have is the fixed body of the switch, and then you have, and you might be able to see right here is this little stripe of white, and as I push, that's connected to the switch portion on the front of the station, and if I move it down, you can see it disappear. So the way to clean this, to make sure you get cleaner down in the switch and not just all over the back of the station, would be to push the switch down and hold it and spray the smallest little bit amount of D5 into it and then slide it back and forth. You can see it moving there. These are a very simple 3 contact slide switch. They don't usually suffer too much because they are somewhat enclosed. You just don't want it to hang up or not return to the at-rest position from the little spring that's inside of it. And that feels pretty good. And then finally, we have the spring-loaded wafer switch here. And you can see here, this, and over here are the actual springs in it. And if I move the lever, you can see it move. That would be pushing it, the lever up and then down. So they each have their own return springs. Every once in a while you'll find a station where one of these springs has broken, and if that's the case, you'll have to source either a new switch or a replacement station because the springs are not really replaceable. The wafer is this brown portion of the switch right here with the little contacts where all the wires are soldered. Care needs to be taken around this because the little solder tabs are very small and they have little portions that are bent over the brown part to hold them in place, and you don't want to bend them or push them around because they'll become out of alignment. It doesn't usually take very much to do this. If I turn it on the side, you can see here is the moving part of the switch, and if I move the lever, you can see it move. And there's these on each side of the wafer, so all you really have to do is spray a little cleaner on both sides, or maybe it's on each side, and then move it back and forth and back and forth. I've seen some people recommend that you can use sort of a little pad on a stick to get in there and clean these. I'm not a big fan of that because you run the risk of bending or de-aligning the little contacts that come off the portion where the wires are connected, and I think the risk is too high. These don't really have much, they don't really have any current flowing through them. It's just communication, and what you want to do is just clean off some of the oxidation that builds up on them. And again, if you're doing it with a helper, you can easily tell if your cleaning is being effective or not because you can talk back and forth to them and see how it sounds. One of the other things that I'll point out, which is a common call that I get with people that have apartment complexes, one of the common residents complain in the building that the buzzers are working and the door release will be working, but I can't communicate back and forth with the person out front of the building, so I don't know who's there. And if you have no matter how many units you have in a building, whether it's a 4-plex or a 6-plex or 100 units in a building, if the majority of people are complaining they can't communicate with the front door, the very first thing that you should check is the speaker cone and the directory out front, because it requires 2 working speakers to talk back and forth. It's very much like talking on a telephone. If the person you're talking to on the other end of the telephone unplugs their handset, you can't talk to them anymore. The handset on a telephone is a lot like the speaker in an entrance directory, and if that speaker fails because it's been outside on the front of the building for 25 or 30 years, you won't have any communications. It's a really simple fix. I did a service call last year. Another company went out to look at a 42-unit apartment building and told the owner of the building that the intercom system was beyond repair and that they would have to replace the entire system to the tune of like $12,000. And the owner of the building didn't like that idea, so he contacted me and asked me if I would go take a look at it. And it took me exactly 20 minutes to figure out that it had a bad speaker cone, and replace the cone and test it with about a dozen of the apartments in the building to verify that it did work. And that service call was just a couple $100. So he saved a lot of money because the other fella just wanted to sell a new system. So checking the entrance directory speaker is a valuable tip. That's really all there is to cleaning a station like this. This one is in good operational condition. I've actually already tested it with a 516 amplifier to make sure it does work, and we're going to send it back to the property owner tomorrow. Of course, if you have a building with 42 of these, it'll take you a little bit of time to do it, but it'll cut down on complaints from the people who rent from you, and you'll have a functional system which adds security to your building. So that's all for today. It's the ins and outs of cleaning the controls on a NuTone N482 or 482BX apartment station. If you found this video to be helpful or interesting, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube. This video, as our channel, are both ad-free, so if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, we would appreciate it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.